What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 things that I didn't know as a new Tesla owner. Now, I'm not new to the EV space at all. I'm actually very familiar with it. I've driven most of the EVs out there and owned one for the last 4 years, so I'm very ingrained in that space. But still, when you transition from other manufacturers, legacy manufacturers, into the Tesla world, it's a lot to take in. Even if you're familiar with the brand and the technology, there's still a lot of things that you may just not know without actually owning one or going through the process of purchasing one. So let's talk about a few things that really surprised me when I actually got into the process of purchasing and owning a Tesla. Now, the first one happens right at the point of purchase, and that is just how few options there actually are to choose from. And again, I'm coming from the legacy car space. So when you buy a car from any other brand, right, outside of maybe Tesla and Rivian, I have not gone through the process of purchasing a Rivian. I've looked at their configurator before, but legacy auto, right? When you go to buy a car, if you even buy a car from them specifically and you don't go to a dealership, there are so many options to choose from. So many. Way too many. Not only do you have like 4 to 6 trim levels to choose from, but within those 4 to 6 trim levels, there's different option packages you can add that vary the cost wildly. It's just a chaotic mess. Even on the EV side of the legacy manufacturing world, for example, the Equinox EV that I looked at on this channel, I'll have it linked above, that was the 2RS all-wheel drive. So not only is there a front-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive version, but there's a 1LT, 2LT, 2RS, 3RS, maybe even a higher trim, I can't remember exactly, but all of those prices stagger, and then within that you can add enhanced driver packages. There's so many options. It's way too complicated, way too confusing. But then when you go to order a Tesla, things get a whole lot simpler. So you just have very few options. So here for the Model 3, you can get the one I have, which is the rear-wheel drive. You can get the dual-motor all-wheel drive, or you can get the dual-motor performance version. Now, depending on if you get the all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive or performance, you'll have a couple different wheel options, but it's between 1 and 2 wheel options. So not a whole lot of variation to choose from. You can pick one of a few paint colors. You can pick black interior or the white and black interior, and then you can pay full price for FSD if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it. And then you can add extras like a mobile connector and wall connector and things like that. It's like ordering food online. It's just, you just pick the few options there are, add or remove what you want or don't want, and you just check out. And then everything else is done through the app after you purchase online. I know for me specifically, ordering my Model 3 when I did, it took a long time for me to get it, but that's because they hadn't started producing them yet. So I ordered mine back in January, and I didn't get it until the end of February. But still, the whole process was really, really smooth and seamless. And the whole vehicle pickup process is night and day better than buying a car from Legacy Auto. I can't overstate it enough. And I work at a car dealership. I was in and out of the Tesla dealership in like 11 minutes. Now, speaking of FSD, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. That's my number 2 thing. I didn't realize the difference between full self-driving and autopilot. And now, since I've used both systems and I'm familiar with it, it makes complete sense. But going into it, my understanding was like every car can drive itself right off the bat. You just like buy the Tesla and it can drive itself. And that's not really the case. Again, in contrast to Legacy Auto, when you buy a new Tesla, it comes with all of the hardware required to use autopilot. That comes standard, but also use full self-driving if you pay for it. Legacy Auto doesn't do that. You have to buy the most expensive car that has the package optioned on that gives you the kind of semi-autonomous driving features. If you buy a low base model trim, you're just out of luck. I bought the cheapest new Tesla you could buy at the time. Mine drives me places all the time. All Teslas come standard with autopilot, which is an advanced adaptive cruise control with lane keeping that you can turn on. It will keep you in the center of the lane. It'll guide you around slight curves, and it'll keep you away from the vehicle in front of you at your preset distance. That is standard on all of them, and it's free. Now, FSD, you have to pay for. So it's a subscription service. You can either pay up front, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, $8,000 to add it to the Model 3 up front, or you can pay monthly. It's $99 a month now, which I think is much better because you can kind of pay for it when you want to, not pay for it when you don't want to. You know, it's completely up to you. You're not locked into it. But if you do pay that $99 a month, you can just do the software update that gives you full self-driving. Then you just simply push the button here on the steering wheel. You can input a destination, and it'll take you around turns. It'll, take you on and off the highway. It'll keep you away from vehicles in front of you. It'll do emergency braking. It will take you point to point. And then when you do get to the parking lot that you're trying to get to, it will allow you to use auto park, and it will park you into a space by itself. So a lot of great functionality there. I can't wait for those things, the auto park and the full self-driving, to integrate. So it will just take you to the parking lot and park you without you having to do anything extra. But it does do everything for you, just kind of in separate steps right now. And I've made videos on all the up-to-date versions of FSD. I'll have it linked above here. And I've also done an auto park demo, which I'll have linked in the description and in the card above if you want to check that out. But I didn't realize that you had to pay extra for it and that not all cars came standard with it. And I think the reason is because I'd driven some Teslas, but they had all been used ones that already had the FSD functionality prepaid for and on there. So I just didn't understand that that was something that you had to add on extra. Now for number 3, I've always believed in leasing electric vehicles. And again, it's not for everybody, and I'm not recommending that everybody do that. Unfortunately, you cannot lease Teslas in every state, and I found that out the hard way. I actually had to place 2 different orders. I had originally placed an order for a long-range Model 3, and I was going to lease it, and they let me go through the whole leasing process. And I've actually noticed something interesting that I'll mention in a second, but I went through the entire, submitting my application, all that kind of stuff, only for them to come back and tell me, oh, the reason you can't progress further in your process is because we don't actually allow leasing in Kentucky because there's some weird laws and things, and Kentucky doesn't have a Tesla dealership. Now, we do have a Tesla service center, which is like, why do we have a service center but not a dealership, and you can't? I'm hoping eventually, because we have a service center, that we'll get a full Tesla dealership and I'll be able to lease in Kentucky. But until then, I did end up having to buy my car. So I had to do the deposit twice, and they did not give me back my original deposit. So I'm still a little salty about that. I lost $250 having to order twice, because although they had in the fine print that Kentucky was not one of the states where they allowed leasing, they still let me go through the whole process, even when I put in my location. I've noticed now that they have a big bold thing that when you try and put Kentucky in for leasing, it says leasing not available in Kentucky. That was not like that when I bought in January. Now, the number 4 thing I didn't fully understand before I bought a Tesla was how the supercharging network worked. Now, I always knew that supercharging was exclusive to Teslas at the time, right? That was before some other manufacturers started to adopt the standard and Tesla opened up their chargers to other manufacturers. But I always had a Bolt, so I couldn't charge at a supercharger. I could charge at destination chargers with an adapter, but superchargers were off limits at the time. Now you can. But it was my understanding that not only were they exclusive to Tesla, but also most people charged for free, which isn't true. Now, they don't do that anymore where they give people unlimited supercharging, and that's probably for good reason. When I first went into this, I was like, oh, I just go to superchargers and it's just completely free. Well, no, it's not free, but it is cheaper than gas in most cases. So the Tesla app will actually break it down for you of how much you've charged on superchargers and how much you've charged at home. So I'm 87% at home, 10% at superchargers, and they predict about how much it costs. So it's usually about 20 cents more per kilowatt hour to charge at a supercharger. So it, projects my home charging to be about 17 cents. I don't know if that's the actual number, but then my supercharger about 37 cents per kilowatt hour. So my last supercharging session was $14.43. And that was to charge from about 30% to 100%. I went all the way to 100. If you're only using burst like 30 to 80%, it's probably going to be somewhere in that range, like the $10 to $15 range. If you're going all the way up, it might go over $20. For the most part, it's still going to be cheaper than gas, but if you're exclusively using supercharging all the time, you may not see that drastic of a difference between an electric car and a gas car. Now that changes when you use home charging, obviously, and I've actually got a video coming out soon. Hit subscribe so you don't miss that, where I'm going to be attempting to use this car like I don't have home charging and give you guys a realistic look for people that live in like an apartment, in a situation where you could maybe only use a mobile connector or supercharging exclusively. I'm going to talk about the practicality and costs of that using the rear-wheel drive Model 3 here. But all that to say, if you are able to charge at home, it's going to be significantly cheaper than using superchargers, and no, superchargers are not free for most people. And then the 5th and final thing I learned after I bought a new Tesla is just how extensive the third-party marketplace is for Tesla. You can basically customize every square inch of this car and any of their cars. It's insane. And it's not just from one manufacturer, it's from like 50. The amount of DMs I get on Instagram about people wanting me to promote their little Tesla accessory company is insane. And although I don't love like a ton of crazy mods, I like to keep things mostly stock. I love that you have the option. And I just had no clue how extensive the marketplace was before I actually owned a Tesla. And for one little bonus thing that I just had no clue about before I bought one is just how much people hate Tesla. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, you get honked at. People will do like close cutovers on you where they try and sideswipe you. They'll, ride your bumper. They'll key your car. They'll spam you with hate messages. It's insane how much people hate Tesla, both in person and online. I understood there were mixed feelings on Elon. I didn't realize how strongly people actually felt about it and how that trickled down to the vehicles also. I didn't buy a Tesla because of Elon or not buy a Tesla because of Elon. I bought a Tesla because of the look, because of the technology, because of how fun it is to drive, because of the supercharger network. There's so many reasons to buy a Tesla. And if you can just compartmentalize Elon into his own little thing, let him do his thing, I just don't let that impact how I think about my actual car. And I don't do that with anything. I mean, I owned a Bolt for a really long time, and GM's CEO says stuff all the time that doesn't end up being true. So, people just say things. The market is fluid. Manufacturing's fluid. Like, things happen, things don't happen. You just kind of have to ride the wave. But anyway, those are some things that I learned after I bought my first Tesla. Let me know down in the comments what you all think. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. What are some things that you learned? I'd love to talk about it down in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to be among the first to see every single new video the second I hit publish. We'll see you in the next one.